Right now, as you listen to these words, a tree in the Amazon rainforest is literally making a phone call to trees hundreds of miles away, using a chemical language so sophisticated that scientists have only just begun to decode it. And what they're discovering is revolutionizing everything we thought we knew about forests. Beneath your feet, if you were standing in any forest on Earth, exists a network so vast and complex that scientists are calling it the Wood Wide Web, where trees share nutrients, warn each other of dangers, nurture their young, and even care for their elderly, displaying behaviors so remarkably similar to human societies that it's forcing us to completely reconsider what intelligence really means. What you're about to discover isn't just information about trees and forests. It's the revelation that forests are superorganisms, living entities where trees are connected through fungal networks that operate like nature's internet, transferring not just nutrients but actual information, memories, and what can only be described as wisdom accumulated over centuries. The shocking truth is that a single tree in an old-growth forest can be connected to hundreds of other trees through mycorrhizal networks, fungal threads thinner than spider silk that extend the tree's root system by up to 1,000 times, creating a collaborative network that makes our internet look primitive by comparison. When a mother tree, what scientists call the largest, oldest trees in a forest, is injured or dying, she dumps her resources into the network, feeding her offspring and neighbors, literally willing her life force to the next generation in an act of biological altruism that challenges our understanding of natural selection. These discoveries are so profound, so paradigm-shifting, that they're not just changing forest science, but forcing us to reconsider our entire relationship with nature. And if you're fascinated by the secret life of our planet and want to explore more mind-blowing natural phenomena, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because understanding forests isn't just about appreciating nature. It's about understanding the very systems that keep our planet alive, and how we might save them before it's too late. Forests cover 31% of Earth's land surface. That's 4 billion hectares, or about 10 billion acres, an area roughly the size of 4 United States combined. Yet they contain 80% of terrestrial biodiversity and produce 40% of the oxygen we breathe. But here's what will blow your mind. The Amazon rainforest alone contains more species of plants and animals than we've even discovered, with scientists estimating that 90% of rainforest species remain unknown to science, meaning we're destroying ecosystems filled with creatures and plants we haven't even met yet. Every single second, and I mean this literally, every second you've been listening to this, an area of forest the size of a football field has been destroyed somewhere on Earth, a rate of deforestation so rapid that by the time this video ends, we'll have lost forest area equivalent to thousands of football fields. The oldest living tree on Earth, a Great Basin bristlecone pine named Methuselah, is over 4,800 years old, meaning it was already ancient when the Egyptian pyramids were built, has survived dozens of volcanic eruptions, hundreds of droughts, thousands of storms, and continues to grow on a windswept mountain in California. But Methuselah isn't even the oldest living forest organism. There's a clonal colony of quaking aspen in Utah called Pando that's estimated to be 80,000 years old, possibly even 1,000,000 years old, making it one of the oldest living things on Earth. A single organism that covers 106 acres and weighs 13 million pounds, the heaviest known living organism on the planet. Trees can live without humans, have done so for 385 million years, but humans cannot live without trees, not for a single day. Because forests don't just provide oxygen, they regulate Earth's entire climate system, water cycle, and weather patterns in ways we're only beginning to understand. A single large tree can lift 100 gallons of water from the soil and release it into the atmosphere every single day. And the Amazon rainforest alone pumps 20 billion tons of water into the atmosphere daily, more than the Amazon River dumps into the Atlantic Ocean. This atmospheric river of moisture travels thousands of miles, bringing rain to places as far away as the American Midwest, meaning farmers in Iowa depend on trees in Brazil for their rainfall. Connections across continents that reveal Earth's forests as a single interconnected system. The language of trees is chemical, using volatile organic compounds to communicate. And these messages can be incredibly specific, like a tree being eaten by caterpillars, releasing chemicals that not only repel the caterpillars, but attract wasps that prey on those exact caterpillars, essentially calling in air support with precision targeting. When a giraffe starts eating an acacia tree in Africa, that tree immediately pumps toxins into its leaves and releases ethylene gas into the air, warning other acacias within 50 yards to start producing the same toxins, creating a chemical defense network that can poison browsers in minutes. Trees can recognize their own offspring through chemical signatures and will favor them with nutrients through the mycorrhizal network, showing familial bonds and parental care that we never imagined possible in plants. Forests create their own weather, literally manufacturing rain through a process called biotic pumping, where the mass transpiration of water from leaves creates low pressure that pulls in moist air from the oceans, generating rainfall that wouldn't exist without the forest. The Amazon rainforest is so effective at creating rain that it recycles the same water 5 to 6 times as it moves across the continent, each tree acting like a fountain that shoots water into the sky to fall again miles away. Cut down enough trees, and you don't just lose a forest, you break the rain machine, turning rainforests into savanna and eventually desert, a tipping point that scientists fear the Amazon is rapidly approaching. A forest is never silent, even in what seems like perfect quiet, because trees make sounds we can't hear. Ultrasonic clicks and pops as water moves through their vessels, sounds that increase when they're thirsty, essentially crying out for water at frequencies beyond human hearing. Scientists have recorded these ultrasonic emissions and found that drought-stressed trees sound different from healthy trees, suggesting that other trees might be able to hear and respond to their neighbors' distress calls. The forest floor is equally alive with sound, as millions of insects, worms, and other creatures create a constant whisper of activity, while underground, roots make faint popping sounds as they grow through soil, a hidden symphony of life playing beneath our feet. The most biodiverse place on Earth isn't the Amazon rainforest floor, but the canopy. That green ceiling, 100 to 150 feet above ground, where 50% of rainforest biodiversity exists in a world most humans have never seen. Up there in the canopy lives an entire ecosystem of creatures that never touch the ground, including monkeys that travel hundreds of miles through the trees without ever descending, birds that nest in air plants, and frogs that live their entire lives in water-filled bromeliad plants. The canopy is so different from the forest floor that it's like another planet, with different temperature, humidity, wind patterns, and even different species that have evolved specifically for life in the treetops. Every tree is a vertical highway, with different species using different lanes, from ants that farm aphids on leaves to squirrels that use branches as aerial roads to avoid predators on the ground. The bark of a single rainforest tree can host more species of ants than exist in all of Britain, each with its own ecological niche, some protecting the tree from herbivores, others farming fungi, creating a microscopic metropolis on every trunk. Inside trees live entire communities of beetles, some species spending their entire lives inside a single tree, boring galleries that become multi-generational homes passed down through hundreds of generations of insects. Forests are pharmacies that have provided us with 25% of all modern medicines, from aspirin derived from willow bark to cancer-fighting compounds from the Pacific yew tree. Yet we've only tested less than 1% of tropical plants for medical properties. The rosy periwinkle from Madagascar's forests has saved hundreds of thousands of children from leukemia, increasing survival rates from 20% to 80%. Yet this plant was almost extinct before its properties were discovered. Indigenous peoples have known about forest medicines for millennia, with the Amazon's indigenous tribes using over 4,000 plant species for medicinal purposes, knowledge that pharmaceutical companies are now desperately trying to document before it's lost. Trees sleep at night, actually relaxing their branches and leaves in a daily rhythm that follows circadian cycles, just like animals, drooping by up to 4 inches at night and perking up before dawn. Scientists using laser scanners have documented this sleep behavior and found that trees deprived of their sleep cycle by artificial light become stressed and more susceptible to disease and pests. Some trees even show different sleep patterns depending on their personality. Yes, trees have personalities, with some being early risers and others being night owls, patterns that remain consistent throughout their lives. The wood in your house is still alive in a sense, continuing to absorb and release moisture, expanding and contracting with humidity changes, which is why doors stick in summer and wooden floors creak at night. A wooden beam can remember the climate patterns from when it was a tree, with scientists able to read ancient weather in the growth rings of timber from buildings hundreds of years old. Japanese temples built from wood over 1,000 years ago still stand because the builders understood that wood continues to live and breathe long after the tree is cut, designing structures that work with wood's natural movements rather than against them. Fungi are the unsung heroes of forests. With a single handful of forest soil containing more than 100 miles of fungal threads, creating networks that some scientists believe possess a form of intelligence. These mycorrhizal networks don't just connect trees, they actively manage resource distribution, taking nutrients from healthy trees and giving them to sick ones, maintaining forest health like a natural healthcare system. The largest living organism on Earth is actually a fungus, a honey mushroom, in Oregon's Mallow National Forest that covers 2,200 acres and is estimated to be 2,400 years old, possibly much older. When trees are attacked by insects, they don't just defend themselves. They call for help by releasing chemicals that attract predators of their attackers, essentially hiring bodyguards through chemical communication. Some trees go even further, producing nectar specifically to attract ants that will defend them. Paying for protection with sugar, a relationship so sophisticated it's essentially a protection racket run by trees. Oak trees coordinate their acorn production, with all oaks in a region producing few acorns for several years, starving squirrel populations, then suddenly producing a massive crop that overwhelms the reduced seed predator population, ensuring more acorns survive to become trees. Forests regulate Earth's temperature not just through carbon storage, but through transpiration cooling, releasing water vapor that cools the air like millions of natural air conditioners running simultaneously. A single tree can have the cooling effect of 10 room-sized air conditioners operating 20 hours a day, which is why parks are up to 9 degrees cooler than surrounding city streets. The Amazon rainforest alone has a cooling effect equivalent to billions of air conditioners, and losing it would raise global temperatures beyond just the carbon release, accelerating warming through lost cooling capacity. Trees can recognize their relatives and will compete less vigorously with their siblings than with strangers, showing family recognition that influences forest structure and composition. Mother trees can nurture their offspring for decades through root networks, feeding them sugar through fungal connections until they're tall enough to reach sunlight, a form of parental care that can last centuries. When a tree is cut, its stump can survive for decades or even centuries, kept alive by surrounding trees that continue to feed it through root connections, showing a level of forest solidarity that challenges our understanding of competition in nature. Some forests are so ancient they're time capsules from different geological eras, like the Daintree rainforest in Australia, which has remained unchanged for 180 million years, containing plants that lived alongside dinosaurs. These ancient forests contain genetic libraries of evolutionary solutions to environmental challenges, DNA archives that could hold keys to surviving climate change if we're smart enough to preserve and study them. Walking through such forests is literally walking through deep time, surrounded by species that have survived ice ages, meteor impacts, and continental drift. Lightning strikes trees about 25 million times per year globally, and many trees have evolved to survive these strikes, with some species, like longleaf pines, actually depending on lightning-sparked fires to reproduce. Trees struck by lightning often develop spiral scars as the electricity follows the grain of the wood, creating distinctive patterns that can persist for centuries. Natural lightning rods that tell stories of ancient storms. Some cultures consider lightning-struck trees sacred, believing they possess special powers. And scientifically, they're not entirely wrong, as lightning can alter the chemical composition of wood, creating unique compounds. Forests have their own immune systems, with healthy forests resisting disease and pest outbreaks. Through chemical communication and coordinated defense responses across hundreds of trees, when bark beetles attack one tree, nearby trees receive warning signals and begin producing defensive chemicals before they're even attacked. A preemptive defense system more sophisticated than anything humans have created. This forest-wide immune response can even identify specific threats, with trees producing different defensive compounds for different attackers, showing a chemical intelligence that operates at the ecosystem level. The sound of wind through leaves, called citharism, has been shown to reduce stress and lower blood pressure in humans, with specific frequencies of forest sounds triggering relaxation responses in our brains. Japanese doctors prescribe forest bathing, called Shinrin-yoku, as actual medicine, with studies showing that spending time in forests boosts immune function, reduces stress hormones, and even increases anti-cancer protein production. The phytoncides, antimicrobial compounds released by trees, don't just protect the trees but actually boost human immune function when we breathe them, making forests literal healing spaces. Rainforests are called rainforests not because it rains a lot, but because they create rain, manufacturing up to 75% of their own precipitation through transpiration and cloud formation. The trees release bacteria and fungal spores that act as cloud condensation nuclei, literally seeding clouds above the forest, controlling when and where it rains with biological precision. This means rainforests are self-sustaining weather machines that exist because they create the conditions for their own existence. A circular system that collapses if too many trees are removed. Some trees are farmers, deliberately cultivating fungi gardens in their roots, feeding them sugar in exchange for minerals, maintaining these fungal partnerships for centuries in relationships older than human agriculture. These tree-fungi partnerships are so intimate that neither partner can survive without the other, with some fungi species living nowhere except in association with specific tree species. The fungi extend the tree's root systems by thousands of times, while trees provide up to 30% of their photosynthesized sugar to their fungal partners, a massive investment that shows how crucial these partnerships are. Trees have memory, able to remember past droughts, insect attacks, and other stresses, modifying their behavior based on previous experiences in ways that can only be described as learning. This memory can even be passed to offspring, with seedlings from stressed parent trees showing greater resistance to those same stresses. An inheritance of experience that suggests trees can teach their offspring. Scientists have found that trees exposed to drought develop a molecular memory that allows them to respond more quickly to future droughts, getting better at survival through practice. The oldest forest in the world was recently discovered in Cairo, New York, dating back 385 million years. When trees were just beginning to evolve and looked nothing like modern trees. These ancient trees, called archaeopteryx, had fern-like leaves, but woody trunks, representing evolution's first experiments with becoming tall, reaching heights of 100 feet when most plants were still growing. This forest existed before vertebrates colonized land, before insects could fly, in a world so alien that time travelers would think they were on another planet. Tropical forests contain more carbon in their soil than in their vegetation, with some forest soils containing carbon that's been locked away for thousands of years, a vast underground carbon bank. When forests are cleared and burned, this soil carbon is released, continuing to emit CO2 for decades after the trees are gone, a carbon bomb that keeps exploding long after deforestation. Protecting forest soils is just as important as protecting trees. Yet soil carbon is often ignored in climate calculations. Underestimating the true impact of deforestation, some trees can clone themselves, sending up genetically identical shoots from their roots, creating forests that are actually a single individual, potentially immortal organisms that could theoretically live forever. The Pando aspen clone has survived for tens of thousands of years by constantly regenerating itself, dying and being reborn over and over, achieving a kind of biological immortality. These clonal forests challenge our concept of individual organisms, being simultaneously one and many, ancient and young, mortal and immortal. Trees can move just very slowly, with forests migrating in response to climate change at rates of up to 300 feet per year, chasing optimal temperature and rainfall conditions. This migration happens through seed dispersal, with each generation establishing slightly further north or higher in elevation. Forests, literally walking across continents over millennia. But climate change is happening faster than trees can migrate, creating refugee forests trapped in warming zones, unable to move fast enough to survive. Forest edges are biological hot zones where forest meets open land, creating unique microclimates that support species found nowhere else, making edges crucial for biodiversity. These edge zones can extend hundreds of feet into the forest, meaning a fragmented forest with many edges is ecologically different from continuous forest, even if the total area is the same. Edge effects include increased wind, temperature fluctuations, and invasion by non-forest species, fundamentally changing forest ecology and showing why large continuous forests are irreplaceable. Some trees are social distances, maintaining crown shyness where their uppermost branches never touch neighboring trees, creating channel-like gaps in the canopy that look like rivers of sky. Scientists don't fully understand crown shyness, but it might prevent disease spread, reduce branch damage from collisions, or optimize light capture. Showing that trees respect personal space. This phenomenon creates some of the most beautiful patterns in nature, with forest canopies looking like giant green jigsaw puzzles with pieces that never quite touch. Mangrove forests grow in saltwater, using biological desalination systems more efficient than any human technology, filtering out salt that would kill other trees and sometimes excreting it through special leaves. These forests protect coastlines from tsunamis and hurricanes better than any seawall, with studies showing that areas with intact mangroves suffer 90% less damage from tropical storms. A single hectare of mangroves can be worth up to $900,000 in storm protection value, yet we've destroyed half the world's mangroves for shrimp farms and development. Trees sweat, releasing water through their leaves in transpiration, and a large oak tree can sweat out 40,000 gallons of water per year, enough to fill a swimming pool. This tree sweat doesn't just cool the tree, but creates humid microclimates that support ferns, mosses, and other moisture-loving species, making each tree a miniature ecosystem. The transpiration from Amazon rainforest trees creates a river of vapor in the atmosphere larger than the Amazon River itself, a flying river that carries moisture across continents. Forest fires aren't always destructive. Many forests depend on fire to stay healthy, with some trees having bark specifically designed to survive flames and seeds that only germinate after fire. Giant sequoias, the largest trees on Earth, require fire to reproduce, with heat opening their cones and cleared ground providing perfect seedbeds for their tiny seeds. These fire-adapted forests have evolved with flames for millions of years, and suppressing natural fires actually makes forests unhealthy and prone to catastrophic megafires. The twilight zone of forests, the understory between ground and canopy, is a world of perpetual shadow where less than 5% of sunlight penetrates, creating unique adaptations for life in permanent twilight. Plants here have evolved enormous leaves to capture scarce light, with some rainforest leaves growing 3 feet across. Solar panels designed to work in near darkness. Animals in this zone often have huge eyes for seeing in dim light, enhanced hearing for navigating in shadows, and many are colored green or brown for camouflage in the eternal dusk. Trees tell time with molecular clocks, so precise they can anticipate sunrise and prepare their photosynthesis machinery before dawn, maximizing energy capture from the first rays of light. These biological clocks also track seasons, with trees knowing exactly when to flower, fruit, and drop leaves based on day length, temperature patterns, and internal timing mechanisms. Some trees are so punctual that entire species flower on the same day across vast regions. Synchronized blooming that ensures successful cross-pollination. Dead trees. called snags, are essential to forest health, with a dead tree supporting more species than when it was alive, becoming apartment buildings for cavity-nesting birds, insects, fungi, and small mammals. It can take a century for a large tree to fully decompose, during which time it cycles through different stages of decay, each supporting different communities of organisms. Forest managers now leave dead trees standing because they've learned that forests without dead wood are like cities without houses, missing critical habitat for biodiversity. The nuclear disaster at Chernobyl created an unexpected experiment in forest recovery, with the exclusion zone becoming Europe's largest rewilding project, showing how quickly forests reclaim human spaces. Trees in the radiation zone show mutations but continue growing, and wildlife populations have exploded in the absence of humans, suggesting that radiation is less harmful to nature than human presence. The red forest, killed by radiation in 1986, hasn't decomposed normally because radiation also killed decomposer organisms, creating a forest of ghost trees that stand as monuments to nuclear disaster. Bamboo forests are grass, not trees, but they grow faster than any woody plant, with some species growing for feet in 24 hours, so fast you can literally watch them grow. Bamboo flowers once every 65 to 120 years, with all plants of a species flowering simultaneously worldwide, then dying, a mystery that scientists still can't fully explain. This synchronized death and rebirth creates ecological chaos, with bamboo forests disappearing overnight, followed by massive regeneration from seeds. Entire ecosystems resetting on century-long cycles. Trees have been to space, with seeds from trees that went to the moon on Apollo 14 growing into space trees planted across America. Though they show no obvious differences from earthbound trees, scientists study these moon trees to understand how space travel affects living organisms, finding that some grew faster, others slower, but all survived their cosmic journey. The idea that trees that traveled further than any tree in history now grow in hundreds of locations is a poetic reminder of how far both trees and humans have come. Urban forests are worth billions in services, with New York City's trees alone providing $260 million annually in benefits from air purification, cooling, and stormwater management. A single urban tree can intercept 20,000 gallons of rainwater annually, preventing flooding while filtering pollutants, each tree acting as green infrastructure. City trees live harder lives than forest trees, dealing with pollution, compacted soil, and heat islands, yet they provide crucial services that make cities livable. Some forests glow in the dark, with bioluminescent fungi creating ethereal green light in decomposing wood, a phenomenon called foxfire that has inspired ghost stories for millennia. This biological light is created by the same chemical reaction fireflies use, luciferin and luciferase, combining with oxygen. But why fungi glow remains mysterious. Walking through a foxfire forest at night is like entering a fairy tale, with glowing logs and stumps creating an otherworldly landscape that seems impossible but is completely natural. Trees have played crucial roles in human history, with entire civilizations rising and falling based on forest resources, from the cedars of Lebanon that built ancient temples to the oaks that built the British Navy. The invention of paper from wood pulp democratized knowledge, making books affordable and spreading literacy. Literally building civilization from trees. Even today, 2 billion people depend directly on forests for their livelihoods, while all 8 billion of us depend on forests for the oxygen we breathe and the climate stability they provide. Forest bathing changes your blood, with studies showing that time in forests increases natural killer cells that fight infection and cancer, an effect that lasts for weeks after a forest visit. The compounds trees release, those phytoncides, don't just kill germs, but actually communicate with our immune systems, triggering beneficial responses that evolved when our ancestors lived in forests. This isn't New Age mysticism, but hard science, with Japanese researchers documenting specific biochemical changes from forest exposure, proving that forests are medicine. Climate change is making forests drunk. with increased CO2 acting like fertilizer, causing trees to grow faster but weaker, producing wood that's less dense and more vulnerable to breaking. This drunken forest syndrome means trees that look healthy are actually structurally compromised, falling in storms that they would have survived in the past. The very air we've polluted is weakening the forests we depend on, a feedback loop that accelerates forest loss just when we need forests most. Forests are moving uphill, climbing mountains as temperatures warm, with tree lines advancing upslope at rates never seen before, conquering territories that have been treeless for millennia. This upward march is changing mountain ecosystems, with alpine meadows disappearing under advancing forests, unique high-altitude species being pushed off the tops of mountains into extinction. Mountains are running out of room for retreating species, creating sky islands of habitat that shrink every year. Biological refugees with nowhere left to climb, the wood wide web can be hacked, with some plants like phantom orchids that don't photosynthesize, instead parasitizing the network, stealing nutrients from trees through fungal connections. These cheetah plants have evolved to exploit the forest's generosity, tapping into the nutrient streams without contributing anything back. Forest vampires that feed on tree blood. The existence of these parasites shows that even in cooperative forests, there's still an evolutionary arms race between helpers and cheaters. Trees wage chemical warfare, with black walnut trees poisoning competitors with juglone eucalyptus dropping toxic leaf litter, and some tropical trees creating death zones where nothing else can grow. This allelopathy, chemical competition between plants, makes forests battlegrounds where trees fight for space using biological weapons, slow-motion warfare invisible to our eyes. The peaceful forest is actually a battlefield where chemical weapons, nutrient theft, and light competition create winners and losers over centuries. Forests have their own economy, with nutrients as currency, fungi as traders, and trees as both producers and consumers in markets that follow economic principles. Trees invest in fungal networks when nutrients are scarce, paying more sugar for phosphorus and nitrogen. Prices fluctuating based on supply and demand. This biological market economy shows that capitalism isn't a human invention, but a natural system that evolved in forests millions of years before humans existed. Some trees can live underwater for months, with species like bold cypress growing knees that stick up above floodwaters, possibly to help them breathe during floods. These flood-adapted forests can survive completely submerged for growing seasons, entering a kind of suspended animation until waters recede. River forests that flood annually have evolved into aquatic terrestrial hybrids, equally at home underwater or on dry land. Amphibious forests that challenge our categories of ecosystems. The oldest wooden structure still in use is Japan's Horyuji Temple, built from trees felled 1,300 years ago. Wood that has outlasted empires, wars, and countless earthquakes. The builders understood that wood from different parts of the tree has different properties, using heartwood for strength, sapwood for flexibility, creating structures that bend but don't break. These ancient builders were wood scientists, understanding tree biology in ways we're only now rediscovering with modern technology. Forests create fossil fuels, with coal being compressed ancient forests, oil from marine organisms that lived when forests first pulled CO2 from the atmosphere. Our entire fossil fuel economy based on ancient forest carbon. When we burn fossil fuels, we're releasing carbon captured by forests hundreds of millions of years ago, undoing millions of years of carbon sequestration in just 2 centuries. The climate crisis is essentially a battle between modern forests trying to capture carbon and humans releasing ancient forest carbon, a time war between past and present forests. Trees can be trained and shaped, with ancient practices like bonsai, pleaching, and pollarding showing that trees are plastic organisms that can be sculpted into living architecture. The Meghalaya people of India grow living bridges from rubber tree roots, structures that strengthen over time and can last 600 years, architecture that maintains itself. These living buildings show that we don't have to cut trees to use them, that we can work with forest biology to create infrastructure that grows stronger rather than decaying. Forest Canopies are highways for millions of animals that never touch the ground, from monkeys and sloths to snakes and frogs, creating an aerial ecosystem as complex as any on Earth. These canopy highways are so important that a single gap from a road can fragment forests for canopy-dwelling species, invisible barriers that look like intact forest from the ground. Conservation groups now build canopy bridges over roads, reconnecting forest highways and allowing animals to cross without descending to dangerous ground level. The first forests had no flowers, no birds, no mammals, just giant ferns, club mosses, and arthropods. An alien world that would seem lifeless to modern eyes, despite being full of life. These Carboniferous forests were silent except for wind and insects. No birdsongs, no monkey calls, a green world of pure plant dominance before vertebrates conquered the land. Walking through these ancient forests would be like visiting an alien planet, where plants ruled and animals were minor players in the ecological drama. Some forests flood themselves, with trees in vernal pools and pocossons creating conditions that maintain standing water, engineering wetlands that wouldn't exist without the trees. These trees tolerate flooding that would kill others because the flooded forest creates unique habitat and reduces competition. Trees choosing to live underwater to avoid competing on dry land. This deliberate flooding shows that trees can be ecosystem engineers, reshaping landscapes to suit their needs, terraforming Earth long before humans. Trees have cultural memory, with sacred groves and heritage forests encoding human history in their rings, living libraries of cultural practices and environmental changes. Indigenous peoples often maintain forest calendars where specific trees mark seasons, ceremonies, and historical events, forests as libraries and calendars combined. These cultural forests show that human-forest relationships can enhance, rather than diminish, forest health. Thousand-year experiments in sustainable forest management. The loneliest tree in the world stood alone in the Sahara Desert for decades, the only tree for 250 miles in any direction, until a drunk driver managed to hit it. This tree, known as the Abradu Turner, was so important as a landmark that it appeared on maps, a single tree visible from space, showing how precious trees become in their absence. Its death shows human capacity to destroy even the most isolated nature, but also how much we value trees when they're scarce. Desert travelers mourning a single tree's death. Forests are louder at night than during the day in tropical regions, with nocturnal creatures creating symphonies of sound that can reach 90 decibels, as loud as a lawnmower. This night shift includes not just animals but trees themselves, which grow more at night, their cells expanding in darkness when water stress is lowest. Recording forest sounds over 24 hours reveals a complex schedule of acoustic territories, with different species singing at different times to avoid acoustic interference. Trees can survive in space-like conditions, with bristlecone pines living at altitudes where atmospheric pressure is half that at sea level, enduring cosmic radiation levels that would damage most life. These high-altitude trees grow so slowly that their wood is denser than stone, some taking 1,000 years to grow as thick as your arm, time made solid. Their survival in near-space conditions suggests trees might be capable of colonizing other planets with minimal genetic modification. Future forests on Mars grown from Earth trees. Every forest has a smell signature, unique combinations of volatile compounds that create distinctive scents, from pine forest's resinous temps to rainforest's earthy fungal smell. These forest perfumes change with seasons, weather, and time of day, creating an olfactory calendar that animals use for navigation and timing behaviors. Humans who spend time in specific forests can learn to identify them by smell alone, becoming forest sommeliers who can distinguish forest types like wine varieties. The fastest forest destruction in history is happening right now. With 10 million hectares lost annually, an area the size of South Korea disappearing every year. By the time you finish listening to this, hundreds of acres of forest will be gone forever, taking with them species we'll never know existed, medicines we'll never discover, and climate regulation we desperately need. Yet simultaneously, the largest reforestation efforts in history are underway. With countries planting billions of trees, racing against time to replace what we're destroying. Trees are time machines, with their rings recording volcanic eruptions, solar flares, and climate changes, allowing us to read history in wood and reconstruct past events with yearly precision. Dendrochronology has revealed civilizations collapsed by drought, dated ancient buildings to the year, and shown climate cycles that repeat over millennia. Every tree is a history book, its rings encoding stories that span centuries, living records that grow a new chapter every year. As we reach the end of this journey through the hidden world of forests, remember that every breath you take connects you to forests. Half the oxygen in that breath coming from trees, the other half from ocean phytoplankton that evolved from the same ancestors as trees. You are never more than a breath away from forests, your lungs and their leaves part of the same atmospheric circulation. Your exhaled carbon becoming their food, their exhaled oxygen becoming your life. Forests aren't just collections of trees, but superorganisms of interconnected life, civilizations that predate humanity by hundreds of millions of years, and will outlast us if we let them. Repositories of evolutionary wisdom. We're only beginning to understand. The future of forests and the future of humanity are inseparable. Our fates intertwined at the molecular level. And protecting forests isn't environmental altruism, but species self-preservation. Every forest saved is a library preserved, a pharmacy protected, a climate regulator maintained, and a wonder kept alive for future generations who will need forests even more than we do. The secret world of forests reveals that trees are not resources, but relatives, not timber, but teachers, showing us that cooperation, not competition, builds the most resilient systems. Lessons we desperately need to learn before it's too late to save either forests or ourselves.